conversation with North Carolina Republican U.S. Senate candidate Michael Whatley, Georgia drivers keeping more of their money in their pockets, data center controversies from across the country, Wisconsin businesses sharing their frustrations, and the cost of fast food. This is the Center Square Daily for Wednesday, June 10th, 2026. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. What's at stake for taxpayers in the November midterms? We're still months away, but voters getting a taste with primaries last night. Maine, Nevada, North Dakota, and South Carolina. In Maine, Graham Plattner, a Maine oyster farmer, is projected to move forward in a general election for November for U.S. Senate against incumbent Republican U.S. Senator Susan Collins. Elsewhere in Maine elections, the crowded gubernatorial primary is going to be decided by ranked choice voting after none of the candidates picked up a majority of the vote in last night's election. In the Democratic primary, Nirav Shah, a physician and former U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention official, was headed with a 26.7% of the votes in Tuesday evening's projections. The AP saying that the race would be going to a runoff. Democratic Governor Janet Mills, she has been term limited. On the Republican ticket, Bobby Charles, an attorney and former Navy intelligence officer, was leading six other GOP candidates in the gubernatorial election Tuesday with 38.5% of the vote, according to preliminary results. The rules in Maine require voters to list candidates in order of preference, which comes into play in crowded races where no candidate gets 50% of the votes. When that happens, the candidate who got the least is eliminated, and their votes are reallocated and retabulated until someone wins a majority. Now that's Maine. What about Nevada? Voters there selecting the two biggest names on the primary ticket to send Democratic and Republican heavyweights to the general election November 3rd. Governor Joe Lombardo appeared to win the Republican primary easily, as State Attorney General Aaron Ford saw some resistance from outside candidate Alexis Hill before winning the Democratic ticket. In South Carolina, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Yvette and State Attorney General Alan Wilson Tuesday advanced to the runoff in 2 weeks for the Republican ticket in the South Carolina governor's race. Yvette, endorsed by second-term Republican President Donald Trump, and Wilson, son of Republican 13-term U.S. Representative Joe Wilson, easily cleared three other candidates in that field. State Representative Jermaine Johnson won the Democrats' primary. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, bidding for a fifth term, charged past Greenville businessman Mark Lynch. He'll face Charleston pediatrician Dr. Annie Andrews, winning over Brandon Brown in that Democratic primary. With more about elections elsewhere throughout the country, let's now talk with Michael Whatley, the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate in North Carolina. Mr. Whatley, thanks for taking time with us here for the Center Square Daily. You've got quite the resume, leading state and national Republican organizations, including work with the White House. So how do you get more attention in your campaign, more so than what your opponent might be getting?
Well, there's a couple different things you need to do. First off, you got to get out and about. We've got 100 different counties here in North Carolina, and you've got a huge geographic spread from mountains to the Piedmont to the coast, and communities of every size, going from Charlotte and Raleigh all the way down to my hometown, Blowing Rock, North Carolina, 534 people. And everything in between. And you just really do need to spend the time to go to all 100 counties and have those conversations. But you also, you're going to need to raise the money, and you're going to need to go out and use traditional campaign, with TV ads and digital and direct mail and everything else to have the conversation directly with the voters.
Now, North Carolina has been growing. It's among the states with a growing population across the country. How important do you think it is to keep Republicans in control of both of those U.S. Senate seats?
Oh, it's absolutely essential. You think about it, we've got a 3-seat majority right now in the United States Senate. The president's agenda, the America First agenda, the common sense agenda that he's pushing forward to rebuild our economy, to restore our borders, keep our communities safe, and make sure that our military is the strongest, most respected in the world. That is going to depend on my seat. It's going to depend on making sure that we keep this seat in Republican hands. We also have to make sure that we're going to win the House. Right now in North Carolina, I feel very confident telling you, and I've been to 97 out of our 100 counties, the people want that agenda to move forward. They voted for President Trump 3 different times. They do not want to go back to Joe Biden's failed agenda of open borders, inflationary spending, and a woke, weak America. That's exactly what Roy Cooper is doubling down on. I'm going to fight every single day for policies that will let people make more and keep their communities safe.
So with the political makeup of North Carolina, and you and I touched on this just briefly beforehand about, you've got like a third who are Republican, a third who are conservative, and, the rest are nonpartisan, or they don't register within any of those two major parties. But they likely are going to have a significant impact on the outcome of November's election. How do you capture that middle ground voter to bring them over into your camp?
You got to talk
some of those who may be more liberal sided.
Yeah, you got to talk about the issues they care about, right? And the people of North Carolina, they care about the economy, they care about their safety of their kids, and they care about the safety of our country as a whole. And that really defines the agenda that we're running on. Which is to make sure that people are going to make more and keep more. We're going to make sure that there are more jobs and higher paying jobs, make sure that we have lower taxes and lower costs, make sure that we're going to keep our kids and our communities safe by supporting our law enforcement, backing the blue, and keeping prisoners behind bars, as well as supporting our men and women in uniform. We have almost 100,000 men and women in uniform with the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard. Almost 10% of our nation's armed forces are based right here in North Carolina. We have 720,000 veterans, more than any other state in the country. So we've got to make sure that we're paying attention to those issues as well. And really, truly, when you think about our independents, right, our unaffiliated voters, which make up 40% of the electorate, they are going to want to know that you're fighting for them. And I'm going to be out there fighting for every family in every county across this state.
A lot of people know what's going on in Congress, and some of the big, tumultuous moments have been about whether or not to deal with the filibuster. If you were to get into the U.S. Senate, how would you approach that situation of needing that 60-vote threshold?
Look, what I would say is the Democrats have abused the filibuster. When you think about the fact that President Trump has not gotten a single one of his nominees through for any position with a unanimous vote, with unanimous consent, or even with a voice vote, the Democrats are not supporting any of those amendments. They're not supporting really any bills that are going forward. If they're going to abuse that system, we've got to put all options on the table in terms of making sure that we can move forward with the agenda that the American people elected the Republican House, the Republican Senate, and President Trump to get moving.
Your chief opponent's party, the Democrats, they're attached to the No Kings protest. Yet in 2 terms as governor, he issued a state record of 104 vetoes, 328 executive orders, and either voted or vetoed, rather, not really more state budgets than he actually signed. So how is your leadership going to be different from what your opponent's shown in his leadership, and why should that matter to voters?
Well, I think it absolutely matters. The legislature in North Carolina has moved forward with a very aggressive posture to invest in our infrastructure, to invest in teachers, to invest in pay raises for our police officers, and tax cuts. And you're absolutely right that Roy Cooper vetoed 6 of those tax cuts, and 6 of those teacher pay raises, and 6 of those police pay raises. He has vetoed not just more than any other governor in the history of North Carolina, but every other governor in North Carolina combined. So, the fact is that you do need to be able to work across the aisle, which I'll be able to do when I get to the Senate, having worked in the Senate, and I know how that body works. Roy Cooper, on the other hand, is just going to march along with Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders, and the rest of the woke mob.
Now, if you were to get in the office, you'd be over in Washington, D.C. a considerable amount of time. But in the meantime, ahead of the November election, you're on the ground talking to voters. You were recently at a roundtable discussion in Wake County last week. What were the discussions like, and what was your takeaway from hearing people on the ground there?
Yeah, that roundtable was on no tax on tips. And what we were kind of talking about, what is the economic policy that the Republican Party is moving forward that I am supporting, right? And what we want to make sure is people make more and people keep more. And a huge part of that is making sure that we bring down costs and affordability, but also that we're going to cut taxes and we're going to make sure that people keep more. What we met with in that particular roundtable was a group of young voters who are surviving basically on tips and making sure that the Working Family Tax Cut Act which cut taxes on tips, eliminated them. Roy Cooper has said that he would have voted against that bill. He wants people to be taxed on their tips, on overtime, and on Social Security. The average North Carolina household paid $5,700 less in taxes on April 15th than they would have if that bill had not passed. And Roy Cooper said that he would have voted against it. I absolutely would have voted for it because I want every family to be able to keep more of their money because they're going to be better at making spending decisions regarding their own money than the government is.
You talked a little bit about public safety earlier, and your opponent says he cares about the public safety of North Carolinians, but it seems that this isn't an issue necessarily polling in some of the top tier issues. How do you address that issue and get people to recognize maybe some of the past instances of Cooper dealing with all kinds of inmates being released and others that were found to have, committed murder, for instance, or at least charged with it? It's a pretty big deal. But how do you get awareness on this and actually have that as a point of contention in this debate?
Yeah, the number one priority for any government, whether it's local government, state government, or federal government, is keeping its citizens safe, keeping the community safe. Roy Cooper allowed 3,500 plus prisoners out of prison, hardened criminals that he let out of prison, who then went on a rampage after they got out, right? So, when we talk about him keeping people safe, the fact is over 4,000 criminals that he let out, 700 plus of them had committed assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated assault, sexual assaults, rapes, and even murders. And once those people got back on the ground, they went right back to their ways. Probably the most famous guy on that list, DeCarlos Brown Jr., went on to murder Irena Zarotska after he had been rearrested and released 13 additional times. A very famous murder on the Charlotte Light Rail last year. That monster should not have been on the car, and Irena Zarotska should be alive today. And you kind of wish that that's where the story ended, but the fact is there's 25 others that were killed as a result of Roy Cooper's massive release, and he's never explained to the public why he let those people out. He's never explained why those were the prisoners that were on the list that he released, and he certainly never apologized to the victims or their families for releasing the criminals that went on to recommit those offenses. This is going to be an election in this campaign because the people of North Carolina want to know that they're going to be able to protect their kids. They're going to be able to raise their kids in a safe and secure environment. And with Roy Cooper, that was absolutely not the case.
Michael Whatley, the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate out of North Carolina, facing Democrat Roy Cooper and Libertarian Shannon Bray in the November election. We'll definitely be talking with you again soon. We'll be right back. Motorists filling up in Georgia kept more of their money as fuel tax collections in May were $196 million lower when compared to last year. That's in part because of a 2-month fuel tax suspension approved by state legislators and second-term Republican Governor Brian Kemp. Now, for Georgia drivers, that's around 33 cents a gallon. Motorists keeping that in their pocket and not having to give it to the government when they fill up. Overall, state tax collections were down in Georgia, 12.6% from May 2025, totaling almost $340 million, as other tax collections also declined, according to information from the Georgia governor's office. Now, net tax revenue collections are up year to date when compared to last year by $344.6 million and are at $30.8 billion for the 2026 fiscal year, according to the governor's office. Now, in March, Georgia House Speaker John Burns, he explained the plan was in place for when prices were spiking.
Now, in just a few moments, Governor Kemp will sign that bill, making it, as he alluded to, the 4th time under his administration that we have partnered to suspend the gas tax in some of our state's greatest times of need and making Georgia one of the first states in the nation to take action to address fuel affordability. Once signed, this cost-saving measure will immediately begin to save our neighbors across our state, in every corner of this great state, nearly $400 million over the next 60 days.
And again, you're seeing that in some of the reporting out of the governor's office concerning revenue for the state, but that is money that drivers in Georgia filling up at the pump are keeping in their pocket. The Center Square Associate Editor Kim Jarrett reports that Kemp extended the fuel tax suspension for an additional 2 weeks after it expired May 20th, citing a state of emergency amid soaring gas prices due to the conflict in Iran. Kemp is asking state legislators to approve the extension when they meet in a special session June 17th. The money to replace that lost tax revenue to the state, it's going to come from the state surplus, according to the governor's office. Now, right now, we've got AAA showing that Georgia motorists are paying a state average of $3.80 a gallon. That's down from $4.05 a gallon last month, but higher than $2.86 from a year ago. Across the country, the national average is $4.15 a gallon. That also down from last month across the country at $4.52. But last year, motorists across the country paying on average $3.12 per gallon. Now, earlier this week, President Donald Trump was asked about the price at the pump consumers are paying.
Is there an oil or gasoline price, sir, in this conflict that would prompt you to release more from this strategic petroleum reserve?
Well, we are, and we are releasing more from a lot of oils coming out of the Hormuz Strait. A lot of it is coming out. And if you notice, the price is not very high, relatively speaking. I mean, it's lower than during the Biden administration. And he wasn't stopping a country from having a nuclear weapon.
Now, something drivers filling up at the pump need to consider is how much gas tax they're paying per gallon. Roads have to be paid for somehow. With the federal gas tax baked in at 18.4 cents per gallon, the amount of tax put on by the states, it depends on where you're at. The range, quite drastic, from Alaska's state motor fuel tax being just 9 cents a gallon to California being the highest in the nation at 71 cents a gallon. And drivers there feeling that, with California motor fuel being on average $5.83 a gallon, according to AAA. Pennsylvania's gas tax is 59 cents a gallon. In Michigan, motorists paying 48 cents a gallon. North Carolina, about 41 cents a gallon. South Carolina, it's 29 cents a gallon. States with the lowest gas tax, including Alaska at 9 cents, are under 20 cents a gallon, and that's Arizona, New Mexico, Hawaii, and Mississippi. But the comparison of gas tax by state, it's not as drastic as the contrast in the Midwest, where Illinois, with the second highest gas tax in the nation, more than 40 cents a gallon higher than neighboring Missouri. Just look at that comparison. According to AAA, Illinois paying $4.48. And that's because of 48 cents on top of Illinois' gasoline purchases. In Missouri, they pay 29 cents. And you can see the change and the difference just simply going over the border. And when you do go across the border, some of those Illinois side convenience stores that are also gas stations close to the border, they for years have been complaining that people aren't just going to Missouri to fill up their gas tanks. They're also going there to buy tobacco products, alcohol products, shop at retail stores, take the family out to dinner, and that tax revenue that's going to different states, not going into Illinois. Now, Illinois is looking to suspend a portion of the gas tax. Come July 1st, legislators did approve a 6-month suspension of the planned gas tax increase. And that's something that's been baked into Illinois' gas tax since it was doubled in 2019. And it includes the increase of gas tax each July 1st. But the projected gas tax increase was just over a penny per gallon. The governor set to sign that 6-month suspension of that penny per gallon gas tax with the state budget soon. Now, what are you paying at the pump? Be sure to comment below with your report on how much you paid per gallon, and also which state you're in. It's right here with the Center Square Daily, and we'll be right back. state house policies around data centers, they vary as legislators and other officials are eyeing the economic benefits, but also weighing the potential taxpayer cost. Now, across the country, this is popping up where at least 2 of Tennessee's smaller cities and counties have recently placed holds on data centers. Cedar Hill is a small city less than an hour north of Nashville. They approved a 2-year moratorium. In McMinnville, east of Music City, they paused them for 18 months. Knoxville's mayor said in a letter to the Knox County Planning that she has concerns about the data center's impacts on its neighbors. The mayor also indicating that she will ask the Knoxville City Council to pause data center approval for a year. Center Square associate editor Kim Jarrett reports the Nashville Zoo is also asking for signatures on a petition against the data center. In Louisiana, the Center Square reporter Darren Svan reports that Bossier City leaders will consider a measure to support future infrastructure project costs with an anticipated increase in local spending and business activity due to the construction of a data center in that parish. Now, the officials in that area propose an ordinance requiring that a small percentage of its sales tax collections be set for infrastructure. In 2025, the city collected approximately $67 million in sales tax revenue, according to the Sales and Use Tax Division. Now, the move, if approved, it could help the city there avoid taking out new loans or issuing bonds, putting taxpayers in debt. Now, the city wishes to ensure future needs will be met with a minimum issuance of new debt. The ordinance there says the fund's operational life would begin January 27 and conclude in 5 years or until the data center is complete. Now, spending decisions left to the mayor and the council, with funds made available at the end of the collection period, possibly in 2032. The Meta Data Center project in Richland Parish recently paid a massive $22.4 million sales tax payment to the Parish Tax Commission, which is more than the total of most of their entire years, according to reporting. Now, Virginia budget negotiators, they spilled into public view last week as top Democratic leaders publicly clashing about data center policy ahead of a June 30th budget deadline. The Center Square reporter, Charlene Guerrera, reports that Senate Finance and Appropriations Chairwoman Louise Lucas publicly criticized Democrat Governor Abigail Spanberger and the House of Representative leaders Friday as negotiations continue without a final agreement. In a separate statement released on Senate letterhead, Lucas said the governor and House leaders, quote, did not want to alter the freeloading policy for data centers and said the facilities should pay their fair share to provide services to the people of the Commonwealth for the next 2 years. It's happening elsewhere. In Wisconsin, Dane County stopping the clock on large artificial intelligence data center projects. The Center Square contributor Benjamin Yount reports the county, they last week approved an 18-month pause on large data center projects. That pause involves a stop order on all zoning permits for large projects for that time period. Dane County is not the only county in Wisconsin with a ban on large data center projects. You've got other counties with also putting that ban in, and county leaders unanimously approving an 18-month pause on large projects. Brown County discussed a pause, but ultimately decided not to vote. And the city of Madison approved a 1-year ban on large data center construction last month. North Carolina also looking to provide for different types of policies, and they say the protection of families, small businesses, and taxpayers from utility rate increases attached to data center development and energy policy mandates. Well, that measure clearing North Carolina's House of Representatives this week with support from 2 Democrats and 2 independents who were formerly Democrats. No Republicans were against the act called the Ratepayer Protection Act, known as Senate Bill 730. Now, senators are back in session this week, with Tuesday the first day of committee hearings. With a sample of differing policies all across the country as we just laid out, let's now see what is happening in Illinois with the Center Square reporter Jim Talamonte and get a look at the latest in the land of Lincoln. Jim, thanks for taking time with us. A lot of conversation has been had about data centers, especially earlier on in the year with Governor J.B. Pritzker laying out what he wanted to have happen during his budget and State of the State speech in February. But Did the legislature address the governor's priorities?
No, and to answer simply, Greg, the legislature did not, and this was one of several of the big pieces. And this tends to happen as in many states where you'll have several key pieces of legislation that are really a major focus. And we did not see the data center legislation move forward. The legislation was proposed, the Power Act, it was called, had a lot of regulatory provisions in it, and it would also have paused tax credits. It would not have been a pause on development or construction or permitting, but there would have been a pause on the tax incentives. Well, that didn't get through the legislature. There was a lot of discussion about it. Illinois House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch said, "We had hearing after hearing, but these things take time." And so there were, of course, many interests on both sides of this. Illinois has the Clean Jobs Coalition and a number of other very strong environmental groups. On the other side, you have the lobbying interest for data center development and big tech, if you will. So you have some really strong interests on both sides of this. A lot of stakeholders involved, organized labor, as I mentioned, environmental groups. But as it turned out, legislation did not get through. It was one of several major pieces of legislation that didn't get through. And so the governor came out a few days later and took executive action. And what he did was he imposed his own pause on the tax credits, did not get into the regulatory part of it. But this pause will take effect July 1st. So if you're planning to develop a data center in Illinois, you've got, a few weeks now to get it done while still being able to get those tax breaks. After that, any agreements after that will not include the tax breaks per the governor's direction.
It's interesting. The governor, having been in office now for 2 terms, running for a 3rd term, he's had various different industries over the years that he's promoted to have certain types of carve-outs for. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but didn't he also talk about, hey, we need to have some, policies in place to attract, data centers to Illinois because we need to attract these growing industries. That seems to have changed, though, especially as he is seeking a 3rd term here. What are the major concerns that we're hearing from people in Illinois on both ends of this, right? I mean, you mentioned the environmental groups, there are property rights groups as well. There are local communities that are worried about, resources versus, those who are saying, hey, we just want to bring jobs to the area and pay, a lot of property taxes. If you could just give us a little bit more of what some of those main concerns have been.
Well, it's interesting, Greg, you bring up local communities, and that's something that the governor did not include in his proposal when he made it earlier, and he did not include it in the regulatory framework he outlined when he announced that he would pause the data center tax credits. That's not been part of his involvement here at all, part of anything that he has pushed for. However, I talked with a leading Illinois House Democrat today, Leader Jay Hoffman, Metro East Democrat, one of the top budget experts, and he said local control is very important here. He said, we're concerned. These data centers are consuming energy. They're consuming water, similar to what you've discussed with other states, Greg. This is a major issue that a lot of local communities are concerned about. But Hoffman said he's also very concerned about local control. That's something that we've heard more from the Republican side of the aisle in Illinois than the Democratic side. But Hoffman also very concerned about that. Of course, energy, water use. This is the environmental groups have said these data centers need to pay their fair share. The governor has echoed that, saying they need to pay their fair share, and we need to make sure that we're not draining resources, that these data centers bring their own energy. On the other side of that, in talking with the Data Center Coalition, they said, listen, Illinois has already, at once upon a time was a real leader in data center development. That has tapered off in recent years due to the tougher regulatory environment in Illinois. And so now if you pause these incentives, well, that's just going to further discourage investment, and not just in the industry itself, but going to a wider scope. The Illinois Manufacturers Association, a real advocate for businesses, small and large, also came out as soon as the governor paused these data center tax incentives, came out opposing this, saying this may stifle development in Illinois at a time when we need more development in Illinois. So a lot of complex moving parts to this, Craig. But as with other states, we're having real concerns about the local communities, energy and water on one side. On the other hand, are you discouraging investment when you pause tax credits, or as some states have done, gone even further by pausing development outright or stopping it?
Now, you've got obviously the legislature that has adjourned, the governor shortly after, when the legislature didn't approve the Power Act, putting out that executive order. It's how long can that executive order be in place? And are there some at the State House on the Republican side of the aisle who are looking at this with a little bit of a critical eye?
In a sense, I talked with a Republican state rep on this issue, Amy Ellick, and her questioning of during one of the hearings that took place regarding this was, I think, led to some of the things that went on here. And that she said and she told me these tax credits were very generous, and that she thinks was a big part of driving development. And she expressed concerns about the one things we mentioned, energy and water, but also she said, it's unclear when you talk about development and economic impact, it's unclear how many jobs are created by these data centers after the initial construction. Of course, there's a lot of construction work going into it, but after that, how many people are really working? And she said, we need to learn more about that. And so interesting that she said, on the Republican side of the aisle, really, you have people on both sides of this. There are some that would be in favor of keeping these tax incentives in place. There are others who want to say, hey, let's hold on here. Let's maintain some local control. Let's not, she said it's not necessarily unified, that there are some different people with different positions on the data center issue on the Illinois Republican side of the aisle, at least in the Illinois House.
We'll be watching that closely, not just in Illinois, but all across the country, where the issue of data centers and tax breaks and different types of priorities are being laid out. Greatly appreciate Jim Talamonte with the Center Square. Get his story and all kinds of information about data centers in your area at thecentersquare.com. We'll be right back. Now it's time for America's Talking, with headlines from across the country that you can find in the description below or in your inbox with the Center Square newsletter, free at thecentersquare.com. The House of Representatives in Pennsylvania took a final vote yesterday on a bill that would allow mail-in or absentee ballots to be pre-canvassed 7 days prior to Election Day. Significant change from current law, which only allows ballots to be opened starting at 7 a.m. on Election Day. The bill passed almost completely along party lines. One Republican did break with the party, finding a final vote of 103 to 98. The Center Square reporter, Julia Kramer, reports the bill, sponsored by Democratic State Representative Scott Conklin of Centre County, sought to provide overwhelmed voting officials with more time to make counting more efficient. Now, this process allows one Republican and one Democrat, overseen by the election office, to watch as poll workers open those ballots, verify voter signatures, and identify and flatten the ballots for the counting machines. Now, while Conklin clarified that it does not involve any pre-election counting of votes or recording those votes, Republicans took issue with the separate aspect of the process. Read more at thecentersquare.com. More than 128,000 people have voted early in Georgia's June 16th primary runoff election, according to the Secretary of State's office. The Center Square Associate Editor, Kim Jarrett, reports another nearly 7,000 absentee ballots were counted, bringing the total to 143,871 votes cast. Now, the turnout represents 2% of Georgia's registered voters. The turnout for May's primary was 28.2%. Georgia has nearly 7.4 million active voters, according to the Secretary of State's office. the Republican contest for U.S. Senate and governor in Georgia. They're garnering a lot of attention for that June 16th primary runoff, but voters will have a long slate of races to decide from. 6 Republicans and 4 Democrats contests are on the ballots. Early voting in Georgia continues through Friday. With a third consecutive month of $11.5 million or more, North Carolina in the month of May moved within $826,000 of $300 million in proceeds from legal sports wagering since launching it 2 years ago. And based on the average per daily, all likelihood, it'll happen soon, if not as early as last week. The Center Square managing editor Alan Wooten reports May's take, it pushed the fiscal year 2026 total to $133 million collected by the state in sports wagering. The inaugural full year was $116.5 million, with a daily average of better than $319,000 per day. Now, for perspective on state revenue, the individual income tax is the state's largest revenue source, and it increased in fiscal year 2025 more than $637 million. Sales and use taxes generate an estimated $5 billion annually. The corporate income tax and franchise tax are other streams of revenue topping the sports wagering windfall. But where does the sports wagering money go? Well, there's $2 million annually given to the Department of Health and Human Services for gambling addiction education and for treatment programs. There's $1 million annually to the North Carolina Amateur Sports to expand youth sport opportunities. And also annually, a third element is $300,000 to each of 13 state public school collegiate athletic departments. Another element is $1 million annually to the North Carolina Youth Outdoor Engagement Commission, which awards grants. About 30% goes to help North Carolina attract major sporting events. Business owners in Wisconsin concerned that the state not heading in the right direction, while 71% reported an increase in their property tax bill for their owned or leased commercial property over the past year, 1% saying they saw a decrease. Now, the Center Square reporter John Stife reporting the employer survey from the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce. It's conducted twice a year with 200 respondents. Kurt Bauer, president and CEO of WMC, said it's no wonder employers say Wisconsin is headed in the wrong direction. He said we're already among the highest tax states in the nation, with top 10 individual and property tax burdens and a top 12 corporate tax burden. He further said in the statement, property taxes are a punishing fixed cost owed whether a business is just starting out, expanding, or struggling. Now, with Governor Tony Evers' 400-year autopilot increase, Wisconsin is on track to climb every year, even higher. The survey in Wisconsin also showed 71% of employers favor ending the state's personal income tax, while 46% said they strongly support the idea, and just 14% saying they oppose that idea. Now, that's just some of what America's talking about. Get these and other headlines at thecentersquare.com. We'll be right back. Now for a bite-sized segment, how much are you paying for fast food? Are you in a state with among the highest share of costs for fast food per the median budget? Wallet Hub examined the prices of food like fast food burgers, pizza, and fried chicken sandwiches across all 50 states. Now, the combined costs were then compared with each state's median household income. Let's take a look at states where people spend the most and the least on fast food, where researchers said that the fast food prices are increasing on average 60% over the last decade, and people are wondering if the cost is even worth it anymore. Where you live can have a big impact on how much you shell out of your budget for fast food. It costs around 1.8 times more in the most expensive state than the cheapest states relative to the median income. The top 5 states for the percent of monthly income spent on fast food: Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, West Virginia. Of course, topping that list being Mississippi. Buying just one fast food burger, a small pizza, and a fried chicken sandwich, it's about 3 meals there, cost residents about 0.48% of the median monthly household income. Now, when it comes to fast food prices, it actually ranks towards the bottom of the country. It's in the bottom half of states for both pizza and fried chicken sandwiches. For example, it's only 32nd most expensive for burgers. However, for that state, since residents' median earnings are low at around $56,400, fast food still costs a large percentage of their income. Arkansas, at the second highest amount spent per monthly income, is the 5th most expensive state for burgers, but it also has the lowest pizza prices and the 2nd lowest fried chicken sandwich prices. The state's high ranking for fast food expensiveness is driven less by prices themselves and more by its 4th lowest median household income at $60,700, which makes even lower cost meals less affordable. And then 3rd on the most expensive per budget was Louisiana. They have the 33rd most expensive state for burgers and the 35th most expensive state for chicken sandwiches, though it's 9th least expensive for pizzas. Now, a key factor that is making Louisiana the 3rd lowest median income in the nation at $60,700. And when this is combined with other moderate fast food prices, again, that results in residents there paying a disproportionately higher amount for their fast food. Now, the 5 bottom places for how much is spent on their income on meals, well, according to Wallet Hub, the bottom 5 is Connecticut, Utah, Massachusetts, Maryland, and New Jersey. But you got to take into account some other factors Wallet Hub didn't take up in their research, just looking at the cost of certain fast food items and comparing that to the median income. You've also got to look at what the tax is in your state and also minimum wage costs, but they don't always correlate. Let's take a look at the top states for the Wallet Hub list and how much they have on income and also for the sales tax. For Mississippi, it's up to 10% in state and local taxes. You've got a $7.25 minimum wage. For Arkansas, it's 6.5% in local sales taxes. It's an $11 minimum wage. In other areas, it could be up to 10% in that state and local tax. Again, the state may have a flat tax, but then local municipalities and counties, they can add on an additional tax for prepared foods. By the way, a lot of these states also exempt groceries from taxation, but they keep that sales tax on prepared foods. Now, if you look at the bottom 5 and the percent of monthly income on fast food and look at the sales tax and the minimum wage for that state, doesn't necessarily correlate with being affordable when it comes to that minimum wage or the taxes. In Connecticut, for example, they have a nearly $17 minimum wage. And the tax on prepared foods like fast food, it's $7.35. Now, Utah, up to 8.75% of a sales tax. Their minimum wage, only $7.25 an hour. Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, also having high minimum wage at $15, but their sales taxes about 6.6%. So what are your favorite fast food guilty pleasures? Be sure to leave those in the comment below, but also how much you're paying in taxes for your most recent fast food meal. We'll review those here with the Center Square Daily. From my studios in Central Illinois, I'm Greg Bishop, and you can join us back here Thursday for more stories impacting you, the taxpayer, from around the country, only with the Center Square Daily.